Hello, Rethreading Lives podcast listeners. We have a very, very important event coming up. As you know, as you listen to this podcast and you get to hear stories of people who've been through hard things and they go through the process and they come out on the other side strong, that is what we want for our survivors at Rethreaded. And on January 23rd from 6 to 8, we are going to be hosting our annual Human Trafficking Awareness Panel. And on this panel, you will get to learn from experts in the field, including survivors, on what is human trafficking, what is its deeper effect on people, and how, as a community, we can come together and work to create opportunities for survivors and also decrease the amount of human trafficking that's happening in our city. So if you are looking for a deeper knowledge of how to make an impact in the world, this is the event you want. It is going to be in person in Jacksonville, Florida, and live streamed. So whether you're listening from far or close, you can participate in this event. And just go to rethreaded.com, purchase your tickets, and come and learn how you can make a difference. Welcome to the Rethreading Lives podcast. I don't know if I'm excited about today's episode. It is a real one. I got to sit down with my dear friend, Kristin Lipinski, who has been a hospice nurse for the past 19 years. We got to have the best conversations and once again confirming the universality of the Rethreaded process. We cried, we laughed, we go through it all, and she just has deep wisdom about helping people transition to this next stage in life. And I'm gonna leave you with this quote. This work keeps me focused on the realness and messiness of being alive and the inevitability of hardship and grief that only love can get us through. It's a good one today, y'all. Welcome to the Rethreading Lives podcast. I am so excited for our guest today. Our guest today is Kristin Lipinski, who has been a hospice nurse for how many years now? 19 years. Me and Kristin met a long time ago in college. We were both in the Wesley Foundation, and we were part of the choir that would go on a tour every Christmas and spring, go on a tour around to local churches. And honestly, I don't know why I've been thinking about this choir a lot, but we both went there. We were friends there, but nothing major. And then we reunited about 13 years ago on the Ultimate Frisbee field in Riverside. Yep. And we reconnected when I moved back here. And we've kind of been in and out of each other's lives the whole time. Mm-hmm. Her husband runs an amazing farm, and they have 2 beautiful kids, and they're just like really beautiful, down-to-earth people. So welcome to the program. Maybe you can just give a little bit of background about yourself. Actually, before we start that, let's start now. What does your life look like now? What are your kids up to? What is your husband up to? What does your life look like?
Well, it's summer, so there's a lot. But it's actually winter for the farm. I'm meaning like time of not growing purposefully, just because it's so hot. So
tell us a little about your farm. We'll do a little plug for your farm because I love.
Well, ironically, it's called Down to Earth Farm, so that's funny. Yeah, he's been doing it for 17 years, and it's just a very small organic veggie and flower farm. He's doing a lot more flowers these days because they're beautiful and fun. But yeah, small CSA, which is like a community-supported agriculture, is kind of a weekly subscription type service, but it's a buy-in to the farm, basically. I mean, that's the model. Anyway, so he does that, and he does markets every week at RAM, Riverside Arts Market. But like I said, so our season is actually September through June. So July and August are our, cover crop / recover.
That's interesting.
Time for him.
What a beautiful season, like seasonal of.
Well, yeah, and it's fun because it's when the kids are off too. So I have a rising senior and a rising freshman. So
which I can't believe. You were pregnant.
2 high school humans. Yeah.
Were you pregnant with your first child when we met? No, second.
I think it was second.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then maybe then we can go back. How did you maybe go back further than how you became a nurse? Maybe you can talk a little bit about your childhood and kind of how it shaped you to prepare you to be a hospice nurse, and maybe take us a little bit on that journey, and then we'll go.
Cool.
I know.
I a little bit feel like I fell into nursing.
Is anyone in your family a nurse or medical? No.
No, my dad was a social worker, and how I came to hospice is later in his career, he was a hospice social worker. So that was part of my journey there. But I mean, that was not in the picture for most of my, all my growing up and years. But when I went to UF and they said, you have to pick a major, I was like, okay, but I don't know what I want to be. And so I went around and just like took syllabuses from, things that even remotely interested me and looked at, or I don't know if syllabus is the right word, but anyway, a list of the classes for that major.
In the catalog at those days?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we had
not online.
Paper. Yeah, it was good.
In the catalog.
And I looked at all of them and just when I read the catalog classes of nursing, I was like, wait, this is everything I want to learn. It just seemed right. And so I signed up and then I loved it. I mean, I just absolutely, not like liked it. I mean, I loved it. So it felt from that moment, it felt like a good fit, but it felt a little random. I was a lifeguard for the 4 summers before college. So, I mean, I guess you could argue that some of that was,
like
was in
lives.
there, but I mean, I was really just babysitting kids at the pool, Yeah. So that was
your
kind
dad's
of
a social worker and your
mom's a teacher, it was a teacher and then a administrator.
So both of your parents are in serving roles.
For sure.
Like investing in the world, making it better. Okay. I mean, that makes a lot more sense. I mean, I just know people that are listening don't know you, but I know you and the intentionality which you live your life. So that makes a lot of sense. That was it
was definitely modeled for me. I mean, so yeah. I think that's why it felt so right. Because everyone was like, oh, why not be a doctor? And I was like, well, I think I don't want to be. I think I want to be a nurse because it seems more, you're just more with people. Not that doctors can't be, but there's so much responsibility and other stuff that they have to be on top of that ultimately, I just really, really enjoy sort of ministering to people, like being with people. And nursing is just one avenue. Obviously, you can do that in a million professions, but I enjoy that part of it. And so I now, as a hospice nurse, like it's such a larger percentage of that is kind of social worky in terms of, it's everything. Like we're working with the actual patient, but just as much with the family. And so it's a lot of obviously interpersonal and very sacred time, and having that role. I mean, like when you walk in, I show up at your house.
Maybe you can give a little background for those of you what is hospice, what do you do? Just paint that picture what hospice is and who comes to hospice, who uses it, all that good stuff.
Well, hospice is end-of-life care. So it is under the umbrella of palliative care. So palliative is kind of the more, the less specific. So you can have palliative care in anything that's going on. It would mean that you're treating symptoms. You're really trying to, especially if you have a lot of what they call comorbidities, so just multiple different illnesses or physical problems. You can have that's supportive care in any situation, but hospice is one thing under that umbrella that is very specific for folks with a terminal illness, where you're seeking comfort care, obviously, but specifically where there is no more curative care available to you. And so it's a very different model. I mean, it is 3 cheers for our regular medical system. Like I worked at St. Vincent's for a year, and I mean, there's a lot of beautiful things that happen because of modern medicine. But there, from my perspective, are also, quite a few things that are not ideal about that system, specifically for people facing these kinds of challenges, like end-of-life issues, end-of-life diagnoses.
So do you have any background on why, like how hospice was started, why it was started? Is it just in a USA thing, or is it I
a quote that I read when I fell into actual hospice nursing initially through a temp agency, which is so funny. But then also my dad worked there. So anyway, that's how I got to it. But Dame Cicely Saunders is the kind of considered the founder of sort of the modern hospice movement. She's from Great Britain. She was a nurse, then a social worker, then a physician, and then a writer. I mean, she's kind of a busy lady. But this quote I'm going to read to you because it just guides everything for me. She said, "You matter because you are you, and you matter to the end of your life. We will do all we can, not only to help you die peacefully, but also to live until you die." And so I feel like, right, that summarizes why I do this work. I mean, I feel like it's
so
why.
I mean, what did you see? Did you see people that were not getting this and living this out, or this, like, why does that resonate with you? Especially that you were young.
I was 24.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was young. It was from working in a hospital for a year.
Really?
Like, you see, and it's a little bit, anyway, I don't want to denigrate any of our modern system, but I just, we were taking care of people in their 90s and I mean, it felt a little bit like torturing them because we still had to do, all the daily blood draws and all the IVs and all the, you have to eat and you have to take your medicine and da. Like, it was very, like you just had to check off all these things. You had to do all these things sort of to the person that came to the hospital. And when you're not, again, sometimes if that is going to help you get better, then it's absolutely worth it. Like, it's worth it for you to get no sleep. It's worth it for you to be in chaos because that's just the environment of a hospital. But if you are not in a place to where those interventions are going to increase your quality of life, then I personally would not want to be there. I would want to be home or at, the house of a friend or somewhere that is where I can have my own schedule and be surrounded by my own people and things. So, I mean, that's for me, place is a huge part of why hospice is so special. And especially as now we have, we work in long-term care facilities. We have liaisons in hospitals and those things. But the home care that I have always done, to me, is it's just my favorite because it's such a gift to be invited into someone's home. Like, it's very different. If you come to the hospital, we do to you, and you do what we say ish. I mean, but at home, I mean, I am coming into your world, and I am meeting your cat, and I am, loving on your kids and your mom and so it is. It's really, really special, and people just are incredible at welcoming you into their family, and it's an amazing role. It's a privilege to be in that role and to be accepted that way.
So you are walking into people's homes and their most vulnerable time, the family's most vulnerable time, and at Rethreaded we talk about going through hard things, right? Going through traumatic things. And I mean, I've seen it over and over again. Women go through hard things, and through these 5 powers that we talk about, over time, through many years, come out on the other side almost stronger. Mm-hmm. You're kind of meeting people like in the middle of their hardest thing, possibly. Mm-hmm. When you walk in, how do you hold? And we talk a lot about holding the paradoxes, right? Mm-hmm. The hard and the good in the same moment. How do you walk into this situation? And actually, maybe if you have how did you walk into it 19 years ago? And then what have you learned about walking into that situation now that you've been doing this for 19 years?
I mean, I can remember my very first patient.
You can.
Of course. Mm-hmm. Or I should say, I remember I was not yet the nurse. I was temping at that time, but it was a woman that came, and she was actually a hospital liaison. So she came to the hospital and sort of took over the care of this woman who was in her 90s and was dying. I mean, not imminently. I mean, I guess that's the thing to remember with hospice is that it used to be perceived more as like, literally your final days. Mm. And now it's much more of it's a care system, and it's a beautiful wonderful model of care when there are not curative things that are working for you anymore. And so that can be, 6 months, a year. I've had patients for 2 or 3 years, not often, but that, it's not the guideline is 6 to 12 months for a physician to say that, that's what we think would be most likely. But anyway, obviously it's life. So it's fluid and amazing. So I remember this woman just when the hospice nurse took over, the peace that like came over her and came into that room was palpable, and I wanted it. I was like, that's what I want.
So the peace
in my life
that came over the nurse
and the patient and the family.
The family.
Yeah. So there's a woman, I like quotes a lot. So
please, quote away. We love it.
So this woman, Alua Arthur, and I don't know her whole bio, but I heard her interviewed on another podcast, and she's a death doula, which I think is such an interesting term. If people don't know it, it's, a birth doula is someone that helps a laboring woman to birth a child. And so a death doula is the same idea, but obviously on the other end of the life spectrum. So that is her job. But she was fascinating to listen to, because here's the quote that grabbed me. She asked, "What do I need to do to be at peace with myself so that I may live presently and die gracefully?" And for her, like, that's what her work is teaching her, is that, and for me too. I resonate with that, because it's, death is part of life, though our culture really does not, in my opinion, embrace that. I really think we live differently if we embrace that, or I live differently. It went from embracing that.
Can you walk us through that a little bit, like how you've embraced death as a part of life and how that has kind of guided you and changed you? Hello, Rethreading Lives podcast listeners. I'm assuming that if you're listening to this podcast, you care about people and that you want to help people who are going through hard things reclaim their lives. And that is the work we do at Rethreaded. We create space for survivors of human trafficking to reclaim their lives and permanently break the cycle of generational trauma in their lives. We would love to invite you to be part of this by donating. All your donations goes directly to survivor services. This provides for career services. This provides for counseling. This provides for group counseling. This provides care management, everything a woman needs to reclaim her life. So if you go to rethreaded.com now and make your donation, it will change a woman's life. So thank you so much for listening and supporting.
I think, it's hard to answer even for myself, because it's just a sense, I guess, but it's, well, okay. So this other human being that I really enjoy reading and listening to, their name is Alok, and they said from the perspective of death, all life is stand-up comedy. And for whatever reason, even though I don't know that I could fully explain why that grabs me, it does. And there's something in it. It's just that death, knowing that death is part of life, is instructive to life, like to living. It is, if it's just part, then I want to live well and I want to die well. Like we talk about, there's a kind of the concept of a good death, which clearly we don't get to decide, right? But we can at least strive for it. We can make plans. People make birth plans, and then sometimes things go awry and you get all upset that your birth plan didn't work out or wasn't exactly what you wanted it to be. But it's the planning part that is helpful. And I feel that way with death as well. Like, planning things ahead of time. And that's a lot of what we can help with in terms of hospice care, but just in general, planning to understanding that at some point, the unthinkable will happen. It helps your family. It helps you just be more at ease, but it helps your family to not be in crisis when that is happening or has happened.
So are you saying that a lot of people, I mean, I watch my parents kind of navigate this differently, avoid the fact that they're going to die. So then they don't do anything.
I am saying that, yes.
Then they're not doing anything to plan for it. So when the inevitable does happen, it's almost like chaotic.
Sure.
Because there's no plan. Okay.
Yeah. And so if what I'm seeking is to live peacefully and die gracefully, which I am, then I have to do some work. I have to allow that fact to influence my life. Slippery slope because of privilege and all of these things. But, the carpe diem philosophy, I certainly think holding that is okay. We cannot always carpe diem, but like that mindset of, don't wait to like live your life till you retire and those kinds of things. Like, I just mean that it can influence the choices we make and the way that we live and the fear that we carry, the fear of death is in everything. And we all have it. I'm sure anyone who's been to therapy, surely has talked about that in some capacity. But, so I guess for me, someone who likes to have all the control that is possible to have, if I can tell the people I love how I want this to go, now it may not, but at least I've laid it out. I've thought it through. I know that I want to be at home and I want to be surrounded by friends and family and milkshakes and music and, whatever is possible for me. Like I know that, and I've told people that already. And I don't want anyone to, I see a lot of, and not that there are many ways to do it. Like there's not a right way. So it's just whatever, like we try so hard to meet each person where they are, because it's not my journey. Like I don't want you to have my good death. I want you to have your good death. Right. And so it can definitely look different. Some people's good death is to go back to the hospital, and that's hard from my perspective. Cause the chaos of that when it's not improving your quality of life is hard for me to want for you. But if that's your goal, if it's something that you've chosen, then we're going to honor it 100%, right? Like but I think the challenge for all of us is the choosing, right? Is the like sitting with it and sitting down with your parents, my parents. They don't want to talk about it. They do not want to talk about it. People really I think that speaking it will somehow make it happen differently than just being alive. But it turns out just being alive necessitates it. So, you know what I mean? It's very interesting that those conversations are so hard, and yet, so the amazing part of hospice is sadly for a person who needs hospice, you know even more than I do that you're going to die, right? You know specifically what will cause your death, to some degree, that. And what that affords you is an opportunity to do some of these things. Now, obviously, the tragic deaths that occur in the world, you don't get that. You do not get to choose a good death or, plan for it in the same way. But with hospice, I to me that is
part of the gift.
The gift of it. Yeah, I mean it's it's the hardest, worst thing to ever need, and yet it can be the best way to, I guess for me, the best way to die, in the sense that you get a little bit of control.
So what is the difference? Maybe you can walk from both sides. Do you have a specific patient that you have been with that did not plan, did not accept? Part of what the Rethreaded process is openness, and that's the ability to be honest about what is with yourself, and to the ability to be vulnerable with others. And I'm assuming that this being with people in the transition to whatever's next, you see different levels of openness. So what are some things that you've seen people, or do you have stories of people walking through that and how they did that? And I wish I was more clear in my questions.
No,
sometimes.
You're good. I have, unfortunately I have hundreds of those stories. But I would say when I looking at the Rethreaded process, like there's so many parallels because that openness is the very first thing. I mean, it's kind of what would allow you to come to hospice because we only serve about 50% of people who die. Really? Or that could, I'm sorry, I should say that could come to hospice. We only get about 50% of those people. And, because of just lots of reasons of wanting to not give up people. It's a very common phrase. I think I'm a big language person, so I don't ever think of it coming to hospice as giving up. I think there's a giving in, which is the same language as, acceptance of what is, but there is huge vulnerability in pursuing that and, and acknowledging it. And I've had many families that a lot of times, doctors refer you but like you and or your family members may or may not actually be on board yet. You know what I mean? And so, we do a lot of work, in trying to, first to find out where you are, what your openness is, and then to vision, right? Like obviously for folks in hospice, you're not necessarily changing things for the better in the sense of you're going to get better, but you're changing things for the better in the sense that the things we've talked about, like you're gaining a little bit of control, hopefully, for sure over your symptoms. Like symptom management is just, the biggest thing that the biggest gift of, I think also of what we do. But you're gaining that control over like, well, what's going to happen to the dog and what's going to happen to the kids or what's going to, help with planning.
That the things I love, the people I love will be okay.
And they're going to have support. Like, so, and then, when you get all the way to community, you get this team of people. So you get a nurse that comes, I see some of these people more than my own family. Like it's, you get support in that way. So you have a nurse weekly and as needed, you have a social worker who's got, resources and counseling skills and all kinds of good listening, and you get a chaplain if you want kind of that angle of spiritual support. You have home health aides that can help with bathing. You have obviously a doctor, physician, nurse practitioner. You have volunteers. You have massage therapy. You have respiratory therapy. You have speech therapy. It's this incredible team of people that, you might not need all of that, but if you need them, they're there. And they are always on call. And it's just a model that, my gosh, if the rest of our medical system worked this way, it would be that treated the whole person. It's very, very beautiful. Obviously, in a hard time. Like I don't mean to glorify what is really hard, but it's the best that part of your life can be made from my view, because of the community, because of the teamwork that exists and the resources that exist. You have we have access to equipment and supplies and medications through the doctors. Like, it's just it's just a beautiful system that exists to support you at that time if you're open to it. But again, it comes back to the openness and it comes back to the vulnerability because, you are sort of admitting, right? You're admitting that you're going to die, which is always funny to me because like it's hard to look back, right? It's hard to know, did I start there or am I just there because I've been doing this for so long? But to me, that is like the minute you take a breath, like you accept that you're going to die. Like that just feels human. To be human is that, but that is not the pervasive opinion of most people, I don't think. Either because they never have needed or had to think about it, or because it's just too painful to think about, right? Like those are the two things for sure that we see. So you were asking for kind of specific people, like walking through these hard things. I would say when you resist it, I've seen, lots of people are like, please don't mention the word hospice around my mother, right? Like, mother's the patient. And you're like, okay, we can do that. That's sure, and like in my brain a little bit, I think, but why not? That deprives her of the opportunity to acknowledge something that's happening, right? And to process it. So again, the gift is time, potentially to process things and to make the living you're doing better, the best it can be. Yeah. So anyway, so that to me, that's I think, and again, it's usually from a loving place, but people will kind of avoid the processing and avoid the vulnerability, to talk about it.
And it's interesting, like with that person's response about her mother. I mean, the question is she protecting herself or is she protecting her mom? Mm-hmm. I mean, like, I'm sure you see.
I think it's both. But yes, I mean, it's, yeah. And then obviously there's every dynamic of family interaction that you can envision in the world. So there's that too, which adds just extra layers of good times. But at the end, I mean, the amazing, I mean, for me personally, the amazing vulnerability is like I drive from the mansion to the trailer and then to the wherever. I mean, like it is the most equalizing part of being human. We are, every single one of us, going to experience this in some fashion, certainly for everyone we know, but also personally. And so it's something to think about. It's something to learn about. And, when we can. And I say that, I mean, maybe, yeah, I don't mean we all have to become like hospice gurus or anything, but I think there's value in, if we're seeking peace in our life, which I can't imagine who wouldn't be interested in that at some point in their.
I mean, it depends on my day, honestly, what I'm seeking. Like sometimes, maybe I am ultimately seeking peace, but I think sometimes I'm numbing out because I'm tired of seeking. Because there's a process to get to it.
That's
right?
true. That's true.
Yeah. It depends on the day.
Fair enough.
I do ultimately want peace. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I just think that's, again, I'm not sure if I'm getting to what I'm trying to say. It's something to the effect of, like, it guides our living. Like, knowing that death is part of life guides our living much more than our dying, to me. I don't know if that really makes sense.
Because I don't know how it doesn't. Like, do you know?
Like, how it guides it?
Yeah. Like, because I know there's an end that helps me prioritize. Prioritize my purpose now, how I spend my time, my vision for my life, because I know it's going to end. Mm-hmm. Yeah, even sitting here saying that out loud, I mean, like, how rarely I think about that. My life's going to end. Therefore, I can embrace what I have now. Mm-hmm. Ooh, maybe the power is gratitude.
Maybe the power is gratitude. I think so. I think that's, and again, I'm not a therapist. I'm not, but and I'm not suggesting that we all ruminate on this every minute of every day, because that would be too much and that would be very heavy. But I think the occasional, acknowledgement and sitting with this fact is actually helpful. And because it makes me grateful, like I'm breathing. I mean, because of my job, like, I mean, I get in and out of my car like 40 times a day visiting folks, and like almost every time I'm like, oh, my legs work. This is so great. I mean, not every time, but you know what I mean? Like it occurs to me so often, just like, oh, deep breath. I can take a deep breath, like, because sadly I am meeting people who can't do those things as well. And obviously we help them to be comfortable in that, but like, still it's hard, and again, I don't ever want to sugarcoat. I mean, I used to think, I will say at the beginning, I definitely would have glossedly said to you, like, I want to relieve suffering, right? Like, that's what I want to do as a hospice nurse. Being alive is suffering. Like, I cannot relieve it, but I can palliate it, right? Like I can help. And I don't mean I mean all these really smart people who make medications and know things, and we learn them and share them with people. That's, there are interventions to help placate suffering, but it's physical suffering for sure. I mean, we can definitely manage it. And that's the incredible gift of seeing the fear like erased from someone's face when I can authentically tell you after I've come, we build a rapport, and that I'm going to keep showing up. And I tell you, I've got you. We've got you. We know exactly what to do. What are you nervous about? Are you nervous about not being able to breathe? Here are the 3 things that we're going to do if anything like that happens. And just so there's beauty in relieving that fear, the physical stuff, but then the mental suffering, I guess, is more what I've learned a lot more about, to know that, okay, I'm not going to relieve everyone's mental suffering. But again, there's I am going to make a dent in it, right? If I show up, if you can depend on me, and I don't mean just me, obviously the whole organization.
But it is, in some ways it is you and your organization.
I mean, it's both. I am who I am because I have all this behind me, right? Like that's, so it's the whole package. But so I lost my train. Sorry.
No, because I feel I'm like sitting here putting it into the rethreaded process. So we usually put the rethreading process in a sphere. So all these powers are like around it. And ultimately you're engaged in the rethreaded process to increase your capacity to hold all the good and all the bad, right? So I feel like what you're doing is increasing people's capacity to hold all this good and all this bad. You're creating space for them to hold.
Yeah, it's funny because when you first asked me to come and talk, like I was like, well, but I don't know, see the overlap. And then I looked at it for 10 minutes and I was like, oh, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
We're doing the same thing. Yeah, I think again, it's just human. Like there's so many overlaps for all the, doing hard things. I mean, dying is a hard thing. Birthing is a hard thing. Like I sometimes talk about that, it's the physical part of it. Sometimes there's work and I'm saying unfortunately at the very end of someone's life, like there's sometimes a little work that your body has to do to get there. Same as being born, and it's just those universal truths that help me to deal with it and help me to help others deal with it, But yes, it's very much this. The process is what I love because it's how we relieve suffering ultimately, at least in some capacity,
Yeah, because, I mean, that's another thing that I've been thinking a lot about is the acceptance piece, right? And there's kind of like an acceptance is like life is hard. Like I think I'm kind of at that point. It's like, oh yeah, life is hard. I mean, like and that's okay. I mean, like that's okay.
Right.
It's just part of the deal.
Well, because wanting it to be different is not
It's not acceptance.
It doesn't. Yeah. It's not helpful because then you're fighting against what is, and that's, I guess what therapy would point to.
Fighting against what is. Yeah. I mean, my experience with hospice is, this might make me cry. Okay. Is my Aunt Mary, who is precious. She was my favorite. No, but like watching her journey and then our journey, she was sick for a long time and like we think she was in denial about it herself. And then something happened to her quite severe that she was in the hospital during COVID. I mean, horrendous. She's in Texas. Horrendous for her and her family. Like they couldn't be in the hospital. Oh, they would like send us videos of her like waving from inside the hospital. Oh,
yeah, that's.
And then she went through some radiation and she kind of went through it all because she did it for the family. I don't think she really wanted it. And she did it and then they sent her home on hospice. And like, this is my Aunt Mary. Aunt Mary makes everyone around her feel like their favorite. Okay? Everyone around her. I mean, if I would ask her who her favorite niece was, I'd be like, duh, me.
You don't need to ask, yeah.
Yeah, because me. But all the nieces and nephews, her own children would say that. And I just watched her, and I tried to like pull it out of her because I didn't understand how. She just had so much peace. She had made peace with it. And she was at this point where she was guiding us into acceptance. I mean, do you see that a lot?
Constantly, yeah.
Really?
Because not everyone, but I mean, there's something in, well, especially if you have had this illness for any length of time, right? Like, clearly you've laid awake at night working this out, right? In your brain, what you would want or how you want it to look and how you don't want it and how you're angry and you're denying and all the cycle of grief. Like you've been on that journey for maybe years, through a terminal illness. And Yeah, I think you have to be the guide for your family, because most of us on a daily, I can't walk around like actually holding the fact that everyone I love is going to die. Like that's no good, And so, sometimes we don't face it till we have to, and that's okay. And then, but they've already done some of that work, I guess is what I would say.
So how do you? Yeah, I'll just tell you one more story. This is my most favorite moment ever. We all got, so my whole family went out. They lived in a, long story, but they had been retired for like 30 years and like lived in a trailer and like traveled all over the country. Basically, they went around and they ended up not traveling the country. They just went and served their family members wherever they were. And they actually didn't go that many places at all. They just stuck close to family. And we all got turns by ourselves without Mary in the trailer. And it was my turn. And I'm like,
bawling.
Okay. I'm emotional today already. Okay. Yeah. And I was crying and just speaking life to her. I was like, thank you and all this stuff. And then she goes, do you need a snuggle? She was like 45 years old.
You're like,
and she's on the bed. And I was like,
of course I do.
Yes. And she like scooted over and like we snuggled. It was so sweet. It's like my favorite moment.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Really
but
beautiful.
her capacity to like do that was just incredible.
Well, because I think she was doing this process,
She was doing the process
like a lot. Yeah. Only because she had to, right? It's, people are like, how do you do what you do? Or how do they do what they do? It's like, well, because somebody has to, period. That's the only reason. That's what it is. And so, the beautiful parts are when the person is able to kind of do that work for themselves, and then they're giving it to their family. Like, and it doesn't have, not everybody can do that. People are in lots of different spots, but yeah, it's such a gift when the person who is dying can, like, I don't want to say console, but I guess console. Yeah, console everyone else to help them understand it really is okay.
Which is just
only because it has to be,
Right. And there's peace in that, which is just still also so strange. Like the giving, not giving up, but giving in.
Giving in, yeah.
This is it. This is it.
Mm-hmm. Because when the only reason to do that, is that if you don't, I like constantly we see folks that I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to take that medicine. Well, then you are going to hurt. And that's not fun for anyone to watch. It's certainly not fun for you to have to experience, but like, they'll just get addicted and they don't want to, there's just things that come up frequently. And I understand that. And so we have we have those hard conversations. Like that's what we do. We take each of those opportunities to peel back the layers and talk about, why it's different when your body has, this kind of pain, and why it's different at the end of life than it is at other times, So anyway, it's those opportunities for those hard conversations, I think too, that really, really makes the job, new every day.
Well,
Very exciting.
I'm just thinking like, of, my family dynamics, right? Me and my family sometimes have a hard time having the hard conversations at work. If you want a healthy work environment, you have to have the hard conversations. We just had one today. And like, it's almost like when you're in hospice, it's almost, I guess it doesn't have to, but it almost forces it, right? Mm-hmm. You have to have these hard conversations. It's probably half of your job is to guide the hard conversations.
I think that's, probably half. Yeah. Well, and even in families that are, accepting and open, like still it's such a gift. I'm thinking of a friend that I was with, and, it is such a gift to move past the humor stage of coping, right? Like, cause that's, a lot of times we cope with humor, and then to say, but okay. And also PS, like this is a really sacred time. I don't want to, I want us to like be in it. And and what do you want to say to your wife and daughter that are here? Like what what are your thoughts? You know, and then it just pours out and it's beauty all over the place, you know, but like, it's just inviting, right? Like, and not that, I mean, you might have done that anyway, but it's such a gift to me if I get to be there to like witness and just whatever, to kind of open that little space to say, you know, this is also an opportunity. And with experience, I mean, the gift of 19 years is that I can vision and anticipate better, right? So I can see what's going to happen, you know, days from now, and I can see, oh, this is actually the time that we need to, you know, I don't want to wait to have this conversation, or those kind, you know, that's something I've really been grateful for with experience, right? It just comes with any experience comes
Right.
wisdom, right? So I feel like that's a part that really makes me love the job, is if you're good at it, right? Like if you're kind of know how to guide people, like that's really special, you know?
It is. It's amazing.
Yeah. But it sounds like your aunt she was her own,
she was.
leader.
She was awesome. She was so lovely.
Yeah.
But I think about at work I wonder if it's the equivalent at work when like I see a woman, you know, she's been doing the hard work for 2 years, and then suddenly, I mean, it does feel, even though she's been with us for 2 years, it is like suddenly space opens up and she, like, almost like everything clicks. And suddenly she's taking leadership on and ownership, and like her life. I mean, it was like the sweet moments that you could experience because you're in it. You're putting the time into it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And those are the moments that I'm just like, that was sacred. That was a sacred moment.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we get to do sacred
I have
work.
the bathroom key in here. I hope no one has to go to the bathroom.
We'll find out.
Okay. Sorry, listeners.
Funny.
Do you have any stories that you'd like to share?
Well, I remember being really touched and influenced by a woman who, I think she was in her 60s. So, I mean, comparatively
really
young.
Yeah. Oh, my aunt was 65.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, you know, she was just lovely, like a very lovely person. It sounds like very much like your aunt, but, and of course her family could not for any reason envision a world without her. Like it was just not, how could you? And yet this was happening, but I will never forget her just looking at me one day, you know, after lots of conversations and just saying, you know, I'm really not done yet. I don't think I'm done yet. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, what does that look like? You know, because again, far be it from me to tell you, you know, what is going to happen, because I certainly have no crystal ball, but it was just, I don't know, it was so impactful because she still felt alive. I mean, she still felt alive in the sense that there were things she wanted to accomplish and do with her life. And, you know, and is sad. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I think maybe someone listening would be like, this is the saddest story ever. But to me, that's uplifting. Like I mean, she did die. She died beautifully surrounded by her family, just like loving on her. Like you just cannot, like in a big old king bed with all the people. Like it was so beautiful for her, but really for them. And no, she didn't get to finish, right? None of us get to finish. Like there's always I hope there's always going to be something more that we want to do. I don't know. So it just felt instructive to me that like we're not, I mean, it's good to not feel done. Now, I mean, if you are 106 years old, by all means, feel free to feel done. But
maybe you don't.
But maybe not. Yeah, I had a 103-year-old. She had plenty to do. Like, so it's, yeah, there's, I don't know. It's, I guess it feels very hard to put into words those moments that are instructive to me, but that felt like one of them.
So in the Rethreaded, the time, so our
mm-hmm.
time, I feel like this is your greatest resources, right? We do this activity in one of the trainings where you basically mark off the boxes of your life and you look about how much time you have left, right?
Okay.
And then the idea is to give you a perspective of time is the only thing you'll never get back. You can't buy more. You can't buy it back. You can't change it. Like once it's gone forever. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting with a woman doing that exercise, and she was like 75 or something. And that exercise causes all types of things.
I am sure.
Happen.
Yeah.
Like some people are like, that was the most depressing thing I've ever done.
Right.
Other people are like, oh my gosh, I
feel so uplifted.
Yeah. And like, my perspective is just, and this woman was in her 70s, and she's like, this is depressing and a little scary, and she has done so much in her life.
Yeah. Very
accomplished woman. She goes, but I'm also not done. And like, so it's like she could still see the value in her time that was left. Mm-hmm. And she's like, there's still space for me to live out my purpose. Mm-hmm. Even if it's this time, right?
Right. It might be a week. I mean, we don't know, but yeah, for sure.
And I wonder if facing your own death does that to you. Mm. Like now I really do just have this time, and what am I going to do with it? Mm-hmm. Am I going to feel sorry for myself, live in blame and shame, or am I going to accept it and like, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say all the things and love my family and still live out who I am.
Yeah, yeah. Like,
even in death. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a hospice physician. I don't know what else he is. I'm sure he's lots of things, but he's also a hospice physician and writer. Ira Byock, I think is his name. And he wrote a book called The 4 Things That Matter Most. So it was just like people, I guess, always asked him, what do people say? What do you do at the end of life? And it comes down to kind of, he wrote about how it came down to these 4 things. And it was, will you forgive me? I forgive you. Thank you. And I love you. Like that those in some fashion.
Forgive me?
I forgive
you. Thank you.
And I love you. And like to have, I know, cry because yes, I mean, but again, that perspective, like that's what I want in my life. Like I want to do that all the times that I can. I want to be reminded, I don't want to think about death at all times, but I want to be reminded, that in fact, this is it, this is life now, and we don't get it back, and none of us gets out of here alive.
Yeah.
So it's, for me, it is a pathway back to gratitude and to, again, never living, perfectly by any means, but I mean, trying, right? Like moving towards those things, like the living with, recognizing the sacredness of moments, like, and yeah, so it's for everybody, this isn't just, I mean, because death is part of life, like that's what I mean about it, kind of like it should influence it, like it should make, again, not that I'm always thinking about those final moments, but that I'm recognizing, like you said, that this is the time I have, like I, do it now, whatever it is, or at least move towards it, it should, to me, it's a motivating frame of mind.
Right. Not a scary
frame of mind. And that would be my great wish for our conversation, ours and our great, the cultures, like, if we can move it towards, I don't think it'll ever be not scary, like completely.
Right. Because there's an unknown.
There's a whole, that's a whole thing. I mean, but the fact that I
have to take off my sweater. I'm sweating.
Yeah,
I think I'm getting all emotional. So now
that's what it is. We're doing the work, Kristin. We're doing the work.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Yeah. So I hope it could be motivating rather than frightening to consider your own death.
Yeah. We had a guest on. He'll be on season 2, Michael, and he got diagnosed with a heart disease that's incurable. And they gave him like years and like brought him on just to talk about what he's learned. And he also was one that was just like, he's like, Kristin, I have total peace. I have lived a great life. And the things that I would say that the things in his life is like, he reconciled with all his children, everything. Thank you. I love you.
Yeah, I mean, it's this huge gift. And again, not in a sugarcoating way, like
no,
in a way that is just about being real and alive and human. Like it's a motivational.
I wonder if death is like so I'm thinking about my dad. He's in the hospital right now. Mm-hmm. That's probably why I'm a mess, but and we haven't, it's family.
Right. So we haven't talked about it.
But like, I wonder if death to me, as I'm like thinking about this, is almost like this shovel that like digs deep, right? And it makes you, it uproots like everything you've been holding on to. Mm-hmm. And it like uproots you and can set you free.
Yeah. And it can also, I mean, a whole bunch of resentment can come out of that ground, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not all beauty. I mean,
like all that's good.
But all that's good comes out. Yes.
And all that's hard, though. Maybe it's both. It's a loosening up of like.
Yeah. Well, it's like the resentment jiggles to the bottom, and like the good parts of a relationship hopefully rise to the top or whatever. You know, like that. That to me is what
it allows
what
you
it
to.
Does.
Maybe, but you're right. I'm sure everything rises. But as I'm sitting here thinking about my dad in the hospital, like the resentment,
it settles a little bit. Yeah.
It's like forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's, again, I mean,
wish I could have known that 20 years ago.
The hospice sort of experience is separate from more acute situations. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to pretend to be a guru of all those things, but but again, just, I mean, we all fear our loved ones dying. Like there's, I mean, I feel like that's a universal situation. And so then why don't we talk about it more? Like, why don't we try to help, find ways to help each other more? And there are people who do. So, I mean, there's just amazing, writers and
I know me and my mom are getting better about it. Mm-hmm, like, my friend, Heather Jackson, I'll put a word in for her if you're listening. She helps people financially go through the different stages. So she's been giving me and my family advice on what does my mom need to do to make sure we're taken care of. And I swear the first time me and my mom talked about it, my brother left the room. my mom got defensive and I cried. But now it's a lot easier to navigate because it's like you have to like get through the initial conversation, and it's much easier now. I think there's more of an acceptance on all of our parts. It's not, and it wasn't as scary. Honestly, it wasn't as scary
because it helps you. Doing practical things is like a great coping mechanism. Right?
Yes.
Like, it's just good, and then you know that you're not going to be in utter crisis. I mean, you will be in emotional crisis, but you will not be in utter, crisis of what to do, with kind of all the details. And that's such a gift. I mean, that is really, and even, I mean, we should all, like all aged people should at least have thought, be thinking about it a little bit, right?
And
like
have something
in place.
Because I would assume, my assumption is the people that are in hospice and have this plan, it eliminates the chaos of like trying to get into your parents' bank account once they've passed. I mean, just like really practical things, and what do they want to do with the house and all these logistics, and
I think the hardest thing I encounter is, I mean, dementia is obviously a huge thing that I see. And like if it's kind of too late to do some of that work, it feels, I mean, it's okay, but it does feel like a bit of a, it's
so you see it happen.
It's hard. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's hard if that person has not named a durable power of attorney or a healthcare surrogate or, what they call advanced directives. That's the name for those things, or living will. Yeah. So all of those things are pre-planning for who's going to speak for you if you can't. Right. And, when you haven't, and then you can't speak for yourself because you're incapacitated, it's messy. And if your children don't agree, it is messier. And so it's just, if it's important. And if you don't have kids, it's even more important because most people do not want their siblings speaking for them.
Me and my brother have not had that conversation.
No, nor have my sister and I, but I have a healthcare surrogate and a power of attorney. So yeah.
I don't think. Oh, it's probably my mom.
Yeah,
it's still my mom. Yeah, because I don't have kiddos. Yeah.
So I mean, those are, it's all those practical conversations are also a big part of what we try to
get people to
coach. Yeah, if possible, if people are able, and a lot of people have. I mean, a lot of people have done that work, but some have not. And it's just, there's no better gift to the people involved in your care than to have it not be chaos, you know?
So does dying scare you now?
As long as hospice exists, no, not at all. Because I feel very confident that if I'm in that situation, if I'm dying of a known cause, you know, but I have time to make plans, and I know that there's, you know, for me, it's when you going to the hospital or you know, seeking curative care, when that ceases to increase your quality of life, like that's when to consider talking to someone from hospice. And again, there is never any pressure. Like you can consult hospice all you want and not enroll, but get more information. So I always encourage people to at least call and ask, you know, what would this look like? Or is it time? Or what do you think? Because it's just really, to me, it seems very helpful to have that information, but
to be open to it.
Yes, to be open. And it's vulnerable. It's vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, could you come over and talk to me about, you know, enrolling in hospice? I mean, that's a big deal. Like, for sure. That is a huge decision, you know, and it's not what we want, but neither is dying. And yet here we are, you know, it's that, you know, you're trying to vision what could be better, right? And what could be better is doing it mindfully, right? Or at least trying intentionally.
On purpose.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So for me, I don't think that I fear death. Now I am sure clearly there's some base human situation, but if I feel like I can call hospice in, I'm
the dying part.
The dying, yeah. Well, and people it's not the death, it's the dying. You know, that phrase is uttered a lot because a lot of people are like, well, I know where I'm going, or whatever. They just have some kind of peace with the actual death, but it is getting from here to there that is, you know, oh, well, now I can't walk, and now I can't bathe myself, and now I can't toilet myself, and now I can't, you know, talk, and now right. Sometimes that journey is longer than we would want it to be. And that's not up to us, you know. So in that, you know, it's knowing, well, what are your wishes? Like, so when we talk about quality of life, there's a book by Atul Gawande, which I'll give you that name. Anyway, it's called Being Mortal. And he's a physician who has some hospice experience, and it's a beautiful book about being mortal. He talks about that well, in the sense that, even physicians, like, can barely imagine, you know, all those things, like the losses that you grieve you know, as you, like, if your dying is not sudden, then it can sometimes be prolonged. But making choices about, this is what it was, your quality of life. Like, what is quality of life for you? It might be different than for me. Like, so in the book, it's like, you know, he asked someone, I don't remember his dad or his patient, but someone, you know, what is it for you? And it was like, well, if I can still watch football and, you know, drink something, like, keep me going, right? Like, that's quality of life for me, right? Well, you know, for me, that wouldn't be like, for me, it would be if I can't hold meaningful conversation and connection, you know, then I'm good. Like, I don't want to prolong that period. So it's important to know for each person that we care about, what is quality of life for you? You know, what would that look like?
I mean, that's a real
question. But then
question.
You have to think about it. Yeah, then you have to think about it.
That's a real question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because my mom, I'm telling all my moms, yeah, there's very clear directives about what she would want. Yeah. Which I'm thankful for. Right. Which would also be really hard to do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But yeah, she's clear.
Yeah. Well, and that's why hospice would be there to help if it's an appropriate situation. Because you can't as the kid, you know, I mean, it's hard. It's really hard to honor people's wishes if those wishes are very clear to not be kept alive, you know, artificially, right? Like, it's hard, and we can do it, you know, because we know how. I mean, we know how to support people in their with their, you know, whatever symptoms they're experiencing, and then not force feeding people
and keeping them.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, if you want, you know, you can opt for that. And, you know, that's what's important about advanced directives, is you get to decide, you get to check, you know, the different boxes. If you want tube feeding, great. You can you know, no problem. Like, we're not trying to decide for everyone. So yeah, it's just thinking through, what would it be for you? Like, what would that quality look like for you?
All right, one more question towards the end. So when I lived in India, I worked at the home for the dying. And as part of the job there, it was called working station. So I would go to Howard train station, and you would walk the station and you would look for the dying. And it happened to me twice. I won't go into the full detail, but my first day, you're not supposed to be alone when you go to station. We found this woman on the train tracks, on the platform, on the platform, young, but had this huge wound, flies, maggots, laying in her own piss, shit. And like, all of a sudden, it was me and her. Thousands of people had walked by her on the train platform, and no one. There's a very long reason why, but that I understand now. But like, I like knelt down beside her and like pulled her in my lap, and like I only knew a little bit of Bengali, but I was just like, Jesus loves you, I love you, and then she died, like right there in the middle of like the train tracks. But wow. And then we had that happen one more time where we picked up this man. We had him in the back of the cab, and he died like right there. But I heard, then we would talk about this, that people they don't want to die alone. Right. And they usually want to die with someone. I mean, do you see this? I mean, I don't know. Those are like really my only two experiences of being with someone when they passed. And it felt so sacred. It was not a hospice experience, but
for a moment it was.
For a moment it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's incredibly sacred. And then, so yes, I mean that I think people, for the most part, I think people absolutely want to be, that would be the number one thing on your quality of life indicator, is that your friends and family are surrounding you, right? Or even strangers would suffice, certainly. And then there are folks that, you have the daughter that's like, I mean, has not left your bedside for 22 straight days, and then like goes to the bathroom, and that's the moment you release, that you die. And how to explain that? I don't know. But, there's personality, there's who knows what going on in our brains but I think I can't imagine a person doing that without having been surrounded by love, so even that person that kind of, if it's a choice, I don't know, but if, chooses to kind of go when it's finally just silent and they're totally alone and they don't, it's not reflective of that they wanted to be alone. Do you know what I mean? Like it still feels like it's because they were so at peace and they felt, had hopefully had that, what closure is possible with people that you love. Yeah. So those are incredible stories of, would those two individuals have died, in any way? Yes. And the change in everything in their spirit that must have happened by being embraced, feels, like you said, just feels very sacred, and like there's no better work.
Yeah. I still think about her a lot. All right. Well,
I bring cheer.
You do. I mean, no, but I love this because it's like it almost is like a cleansing or something. What is a full circle moment for you that, like, I don't know if it's something you went hard through and then it all came together, or you're watching a family go through it? Like, do you have any full circle moments where maybe your sphere expanded and you were able to hold it all?
I mean, it feels like that's my work, like not every day, obviously, there are lots of regular days, right? But when I'm when I am with people who are actively transitioning, it's always a full circle moment. I mean, it's I would say specifically with a friend, like he was an old landlord, but really a friend, and he requested me to be his hospice nurse, which was just very sweet. And it was, I don't know, there was just such a whatever that sphere, this thing that you did with your hands, like that happened. It was only maybe 2 weeks that I was with him, of that end part of his life. And it all felt really, really sacred. And like, I wasn't really doing, again, I can do practical things like whatever, put a catheter in if you need it. I can get you all the supplies. I can, whatever, change dressing. I can do like nursing things. And that is like drops in the bucket of what I feel like I get to do, which is, the gratitude from his wife and daughter and son, and like just for the whole experience, and the sort of just being the guide. Like we sometimes say that we're compassionate guides, right? Like that used to be one of our titles. I was like, I don't know why that changed, but anyway, it's such a gift. Like it is such an amazing gift to be part of. And so they're all full circle moments. Like they're why I love my job. They're why I love being alive. They're why, it's really, and even again, not that they're all beautiful, because they're not. The person that pops into my mind is a much younger man who struggled so much. It was, we almost always eliminate physical suffering. And he was someone that I don't think we entirely did. And there, all kinds of factors there, but nonetheless, like his son was in the room next door, building computers, and his wife was in the bed with him. And it was still so, so beautiful and sacred, even though the hardness, it never, sometimes hard, you get like a respite. There was no respite. Like it just stayed hard the whole time, and yet I really believe in my soul that it was still the best it could be. I don't think there was someone that could have done it, or I don't mean someone, but like being in the hospital would not have made it better. I still think it was, it was a full circle moment, because we just kept going through it together and supporting each other and trying, right? Even if we don't get it right, kind of right, quote unquote, or as right as we want to, it's still, I don't know. It has stuck with me, because it just makes me want to do better, or like find ways to tweak things, and not me personally, but like with the whole team, to do even better if we encounter something like that again, a situation like that. But anyway, if you allow me, good. I'll just talk forever about all my full circle moments. But
no, I would. And then, what is your advice to people navigating this?
My advice is to think about the practical parts of you not living here anymore, not being alive anymore. So, that's easier. So, we should always have our affairs in order. I really, that whole phrase just cracks me up. Because I don't have any affairs, but no, I'm kidding. But that phrase, like the practical side is that stuff, right? And I certainly encourage everyone, as much as you're able, to have, have a will, have a healthcare surrogate, like no, and then actually speak to them. Don't just put them on a piece of paper, but forget to tell them what quality of life is for you. And so it would be definitely those practical things. And then, on kind of just a spiritual level, like for me, it would be reading or listening to things, that would help me deal with my fear of death, because we all have it, or that would help me just feel like, okay, like this is someday, hopefully way down the road, this is going to happen. And I just want to be as ready as I can be. I want to, what did she say? Like, what what do I need to do to be at peace with myself so that I can live presently and die gracefully, whenever that is. Like I would just encourage people to think on that, and then whatever resources you need for that. I mean, it might be talking to, a pastor or a priest. It might be talking to a therapist. It might be talking to family members, calling hospice for a loved one that you're like, oh gosh, maybe it is time, right? Or at least let's have a conversation. It's reaching out for those resources is what I would recommend.
Oh, well, Kristin, thank you for saying yes.
It was scary, but I did it.
You did it, and it was great. And I cried. It's like, oh, thank you for being here. And thank you for your work. What I love, I think, the most about this is that I think most people would look at being a hospice nurse and being like, how could you possibly do that? And then you kind of flip it on its head and be like, how can I not do this? This is
I get to do this.
Yeah, like you get to do this.
It's amazing.
And I mean, I loved the universality of the Rethreaded process and how when this all fell into our lap and kind of brought form, we're like, yeah, this is a universal truth that we found. So just bless you on your work, and bless you as I think when I'm around you and I watch other people when they're around you, how you talked about when the nurse walks in the room, there's a sense of peace. You got it.
Very sweet. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, listeners. Oh yeah. And I'm always supposed to say, subscribe, like, comment, listen, buy stuff from Rethreaded. All right. Thank you all. Bye-bye.